Chapter 9 Dreams of a Mourned Past. Life doesn't get easier or more forgiving. We get stronger and more resilient. Dr. Steve Maraboli. Failure is pain. It is universal, be it physical or mental. We all at some point in our lives experienced it of varying intensities. Regardless of the circumstances we are born in, our definition of pain may change in accordance with both privilege and surroundings, but it remains the same principle. What really measures you and me is how pain is dealt with. True, minor pains can be just shrugged off, but sometimes there's a lot of minor pains that grow to become one giant inconvenience to the body, mind, or both. Sometimes the pain can be severe, and even worse still, it can be constant, ever growing bleaker by what could feel like an eternity. Unfortunately, the universe is careless, and fate seems all too biased to give the poor, the hungry, the lonely and the sick the worst pains of all, becoming a cycle of coping mechanisms as damaging as the very source of their troubles, or worse, intensifies them. So, what do we all share in pain then, if it has a preference towards the misfortunate? Simple. Faith. Faith that it will all come to pass, and the joy of relief, a silver lining to dark clouds above. Sadly, though, it can be too great and unbearable to some, and they choose a way out only they believe can be the silver lining. And what they leave behind is more pain of loss by those that knew them, and the sting never goes away. And even if they didn't choose their way out of their suffering, those left behind at one point in their life will ask, even if they don't believe there's someone there to listen, "Let me trade. It should have been me instead of them." In addition, you, me, and everyone else have each other. Naive as it may seem, consider each and everyone around you, and even those in other countries, as a possible friend. What's stopping you, if not? And can anything be done about it? For if we have each other, then our burdens can be made less exhausting. If through empathy and understanding of one another, we can be better, if not for now, then for the future to be. Of course, sometimes we need to be reminded of this, especially in hours of need. Wisdom we often give to our children may need to be said back to us at some point. Decades ago on the planet Aurelia, a world more precious than any diamond lays at the heart of the Daijin Federation's home system in the Carina Nebula. The structure, known by the astronomer as the Cosmic Cliffs, give the night sky such a wondrous display of glittering stars and gas that many artists from times long past to this very day still fail to capture its wonders. As for the day side, the planet's azure of the night sky was contrasted with the vibrant green of savannas, rainforests, and grasslands of continental magnitudes, caped with mountains topped with glistening ice, sparkling in hypnotic harmony. At the northern hemisphere, at a latitude of 56 degrees, the plateau of the Elders is a mountainous region occasionally broken up by long grasslands fit for agriculture, fueled by both the many rivers sourced from the icy glaciers and the large fjords of the coastal areas 20 miles as the crow would fly. Among the tapestry of green, blue, and floral pigments of flowers and crops is a great city woven into the land, never dominating the nature, but coexisting in a symbiotic relationship. Bridges built on rivers where wild herbivores migrate in tumultuous herds. The land was as much alive as the city that it shared the domain of the plateaus with. homing in to one of the eastern slopes that border the mountains to the forest. A clump of trees sit atop a distinct bulge on the slope that breaks out to a few hundred meters, where the workings of a marvelous garden hides away the stone pavilion built into the mountainside. Known by the locals as the Conqueror's Observatory, the pavilion is a holiday retreat reserved for the leadership of the Daijin Federation. It has existed for well over 3,000 years, and thanks to the marvel of engineering, it never lost its past glory. There is so much history these walls could speak, from the first ruler of Aurelia, Master Daijin, to its now present occupant, Tiberius Soren. When standing from either its tip or the top balcony of the three-story pavilion, its name was self-explanatory. Fully seeing the great grasslands, mountains that border it, and the capital city of the Daijin Federation, Edoniale, in the same manner an astronomer might gaze to the stars with their telescope. The centre of the pavilion's courtyard stood a tree dominant of all the others around it, thicker than the average arm span, reaching 60 feet into the air, covered from top to bottom by a mixture of purple and green leaves. The purple ones flowered and produced a scent that could ease any anxiety. Stood at the grass circle surrounding the tree was Tiberius, wearing a tanned leather jacket bearing the patterns of his southern Aurelian heritage, straps of leather and a feather on his shoulder, with a matching set of slacks and hardy boots for hiking. Stood by his side was someone more precious to him than anything that they treaded upon, than any gem, army, or monotonal possession could replace. His daughter, Mithra. She wore a simple top covered by a jacket and wore basic trousers, gloves, and boots sized for her. At this time, she was 6 years of age, and her birthday was in the next month. Her white hair a symbol of her royal blood as a princess, but her tanned skin bore resemblance to her father. Her horns had yet to develop, and as such, where they would soon begin to grow from where two small studs were. While she would be celebrating it with her friends and family in this pavilion, and expected to be piled with gifts, her father had planned to give her an early one today. Knowledge. Mithra, you set for your test? She patted her gloves together, and with a radiant smile looking up to her father, she exclaimed, "Ready as I'll ever be, Dad." Tiberius gave her a smile, in return before leaping to the top of the tree with ease. Using his powers, he levitated just above the tip, and crossed his legs as if he was sat around a campfire. Mithra giggled and remarked, "You know I can't jump that high yet, Dad. I won't get half up." With a gentle tone, he spoke to her. "No jumping today. I want you to climb." It puzzled Mithra. Then she tried to look back to the last time she climbed anything, remembering merely a small wall that had pads for her to cling onto. Then came her doubts. She cannot fly yet, if at all. She cannot jump high enough to reach the top, and even then, when climbing was difficult, it was heavily handicapped for her by the pads. Then, the questioning and fear of failure set in. Why would her father ask of her this task, that by all rights is impossible and perilous for her? "What if I fall?" she asked, very concerned for her own well-being. "Then you hit the ground." "I don't want to." "Then climb and nothing else. Look at me, if it helps you." She approached the tree and studied its geometry. Her brain began to process like no other mind at her age should. She could feel it. Bit by bit, and day by day, her powers were slowly beginning to manifest. She knew when she started puberty, what she could accomplish would be nothing short of miraculous. This is how the path to those miracles began, with training and guidance by her father. She leapt 9 feet high and clung to the bark of the tree like a vice. Her fingers tensed from the exertion to keep her on. She took deep breaths every time she made a move. The cold mountainous air soothed her lungs and gave her bursts of energy to keep her going. Tiberius watched on as she passed a third of the way up and applauded to her. "Keep going! You're doing great!" he shouted to her. He could see the focus and determination from her daughter, and words couldn't describe how proud he was to witness her climb. She passed the halfway point, and a smile ran across her face. She was aiming for the top, and nothing could stop her. Then gravity stopped her. Aided by the slipping of her foot and sudden panic, Mithra fell to the ground and struck the grass with a thud. It winded her mildly, and she began to feel her arm where her pain was shooting up. Fighting back tears, she looked at how far she had climbed, and with sorrow, realized how much was still left. "I didn't do it," she exclaimed, eyes beginning to well up with tears. Tiberius leaned forward to look down to her. "And what will you do about it?" Looking at the tree, she felt a hint of frustration, anger, and then changed it to determination. She fought through the bruised arm and began climbing again. This time she was ready for it, following the same way up and maneuvered to the right just before the point she slipped at. It worked. Heed these words well, Mithra. Are you listening? Yes, Dad. What I say to you may sound confusing at first, but as you get older, the responsibilities of adulthood, road duties, and if you choose to be, then also motherhood, you'll understand them fully. Did it come across to you that I could have just came down to catch you? Yes. Why did you not? Still hurts. Because sometimes I may not be there to protect you, and as you grow up, I will not be as present as I am now. And one day, as crazy as it may seem, you'll see my face for the last time. Until that day and beyond, you will experience pain as much as you will experience joy. It will come in physical or mental. How do you feel now? Arm hurts, confused and hungry. All negative for sure. But do you think those feelings will persist for the rest of the day? No. Because you are not having a bad day. You're having a brief moment of negativity. But the power comes to endure through it. Learn from it and continue on your way. Gleefully, he alerts her to how high she has got. During her talk, she had climbed 2/3 of the tree and nearing 3/4. She looks up to her father with a joyous smile as the wind blew her hair aside. You're learning from it now, and that is what it means to live a true, just and happy life. To understand the unfairness and distress is only temporary and minute in comparison. How do you feel now? Brilliant! She exclaims at the top of her voice. In a lapse in judgment, she threw her arms back in a celebratory manner, immediately beginning to tumble again. This time, Tiberius darted down to catch her. Yet to her surprise, her father still fell to the ground, holding her tight, then hit the ground in a much harder thud than she did tenfold. Of course, for Tiberius, he rose without any issue or sign of physical harm, and dusted off the dirt Mithra had got from her fall and climbing against the tree, and let her down on the ground. She was ashamed of herself again, not even wanting to look at her father in the eye, and began to sulk. He got down to his knees to meet her at eye level, and wiped a tear off her cheek. Why are you sad, darling? Because I failed again. Do I look disappointed in you? He spoke confidently. Mithra turned her gaze to his face, showing nothing but acceptance and the warmth of a proud father. I'm proud of you, Mithra. Not because you didn't take it to the top of the tree, But because, despite failing the first time, you got back up immediately and tried again, despite already being hurt and achieving more than you did before, that's growth. That's learning to live with pain and discomfort, to then become stronger and move past it to something better. She began to smile again. Inquisitively, she beckoned to him. Why catch me that time? If he was honest, it's because she would have been seriously hurt from the fall. But the reason was another lesson. Tiberius held his arm out for Mithra to grab. She held on as he flew to the top of the tree and ascended to give her the answer. Sometimes you may need to help others with their pain. Being nice and doing stuff like that can be more powerful than any punch, because with that you begin to know a person, their culture and the key to their happiness, and in turn, peaceful coexistence and mutual prosperity. Finally reaching the top, the city and its surrounding areas were in full field of vision to Tiberius and Mithra. He pointed to the city. That, and all its people will one day look up to you to be their protector, their teacher, and above all else their supporter. You are royalty, and we are the most powerful servants to the people. You have been born into a family that may never know hunger, thirst, the cold of winter, or the insecurity of poverty. For that, you may be resented, thus you must earn trust and the very privileges of which your circumstances have given you. Sorry, Dad, but the big words are starting to make my head ache. He chuckled to himself a bit. Okay then. Simply put, understand that other people are going through their lives differently to yourself, with their own struggles and dreams. What you can always do is help them in some manner, but do not allow them to be dependent entirely on you. Merely help them. Never force them, never coerce, and in turn you yourself be open to new possibilities and horizons. The universe is vast, and full of wondrous people with dreams, that we should all have the right to fulfill, so long as it doesn't conflict severely with others. Mithra looked towards the city, not fully developing her telescopic vision, but just enough to make out the details to traffic, floating cars, and the occasional military jet on patrol. So many people to help. Is it possible? Your mother's father definitely proved it possible. And do you think you can follow in Grandpa Dager's footsteps? He looks down to the city's lower sides, and in a hesitant tone he responds, I can only try. That's the important thing to do in life. Just try. Then I best be there to help you then, She smiled fully with a chuckle, and patting her father's head. She looked down behind her, and what she saw made her eyes erupt with glee. Mum! A feminine, regal voice called from the bottom of the tree. If you're done boring her, our little girl's hungry and bruised, so let's save the philosophy for after dinner. Tiberius turned to face the woman, carrying an ear-to-ear smile and their daughter down to the ground in front of her. She wore a blue jacket marked with golden trims. Unzipped, it revealed a full body suit that wrapped around her form perfectly. A corset to match, and knee-high sturdy boots covered in gravel dust at the soles. She herself had 2 pairs of horns, though the lower pair was considerably smaller than the upper, concealed mostly by her hair. They arched backwards, and were as thick as her neck. Her eyes glistened like sapphires, and fair-skinned enhanced her pearl-white hair that slipped back with a couple of braids down to her shoulders. She placed her hands on her hips and glared at Tiberius as he walked to her with Mithra. How you been, honey? He asked, before they exchanged a kiss. Landslide an hour away, so I had to move some boulders off the road. Locals are using the rocks I smashed for the foundations to fix any damages to the road. Very good, Mom. When can I start punching boulders? Mithra congratulated. She got a chuckle off her mother, who picked her up and gave her a hug. When you're older, we'll go train together, you and me, and then your dad can hang out more with his buddies. How's that? Mithra pranced around joyfully ahead of her parents into the bright stone archways of the pavilion. Lined with flowers and lanterns, the natural architecture and variety of floral and plant growth allowed all types of creatures, from birds to lizards, to roam freely across the estate. A computer located above the archway played a small jingle before announcing, "Welcome back, Queen Nynisha. Would you like a bath prepared for you? You appear to be sweaty from exertion." "Yes, and do make it bubbly. I'm expecting company," turning her head to Tiberius, smiling enough to reveal her fang-like canines. They were much larger than the average Aurelian female due to her parentage. Tiberius responded with a baritone. "Oh, really?" She placed her fingers on his lips. "Easy there. Dinner after tonight?" The remark rewarded him a playful thump on the chest by Nynisha. "How's our little girl been doing?" Tiberius observed Mithra playfully jumping around, performing backflips and clean landings on the stone paths. "She's going to be as agile as her mother, at least." "And what might she take from her father?" Nynisha inquired. "Hopefully. Some caution." "Oh, she'll be fine if she slips here. Wasn't your lesson just now about learning from failure?" "Yes, but caution too." She could sense the concern in his voice and offered some reassurance. "Just don't be too hard on her, okay? I know you're concerned about her having a lot of privileges for being royal, but she'll learn it in due time." I know, it's just..." The pause from confusion gave Nynisha a chance to clarify. "You don't want her to be an irresponsible brat, since you grew up mostly from middle class during the financial woes that led to my father's civil war. You had to make do and prepare to possibly lose everything." He nodded. She took the words right out of his mouth. He wanted her to be thankful for what she had, but not take it for granted. Too often those brought up with silver spoons find struggling to comprehend the stones from which the metal was mined from, that someday they may end up having those very stones become their most prized possessions. And besides, if she slips, it's another lesson, or... She points to the top of the archway, where Mithra had climbed to and balanced on the middle stone. "Mom, catch me!" With a signal from her mother, Mithra jumped from the arch. Nynisha leapt the 40 feet with ease, grabbing her daughter and holding her close to her chest, and landed briskly in front of Tiberius, then let Mithra continue to play with a stick she found near her, while entering through a glass door to a dining room featuring a marble table lined with oak and flanked with cushioned seats. "So, who's hungry for some pilaf?" Nynisha shouted. The response was the rapid chattering of Mithra's shoes as she came sprinting through the doorway yelling, "Me! Me! Me!" Later on, in the evening, at the bedchamber of Tiberius and Nynisha, Tiberius was standing at the balcony that overlooked the pavilion, gazing at the city on the horizon. All forms of vehicles slowly moving like an ant colony, carrying torches. Despite the sheer amount of lights in the city, the types used gave off very little light pollution, so the cosmic cliffs of the Carina Nebula were visible to all. A grand painting of the night sky dazzling with stars. The sky bore 2 moons of different sizes and distance. Both were at quarter moon, with the foremost taking up as much as a closed fist at arm's length, while the other was more of a coin in size, relatively speaking, but bright enough, along with the other, to cast a shadow for each. Tiberius was wearing a gown. Next to him was a telescope and a bookshelf, the contents of which were the subjects of astronomy, star charts and mapping of different authors, though one dominated the majority as King Sagan VII, or the great great-grandfather of Ninetia, and former king of Aurelia. The telescope of which Tiberius was stood near had Sagan's initials as CS on its base, a perfectly preserved relic. However, he didn't need it to observe the close details of the moons, or the actions of his people in the city, spotting one gentleman in his house deadlifting, for example, though his eyes turned to Ninetia, who had just came out of the shower. Her skin emitted a blue glow around her, which started to make the water on her skin evaporate. She dried herself with her own power. She covered herself in a purple silk nightdress that complemented her body shape and dragged behind her like a short cape, removing the bracelets and bands off her horns and rings from her fingers before resting on her back on the bed. Tiberius laid beside her, where she rested her head on his chest. He furled his fingers through her hair gently. They stayed that way for a minute until Ninetia broke the silence. "I've heard about the outer cloud. Is it really them?" Her husband took a deep breath. "I hope not. They always said they'd come back for revenge, and time has passed since. The outermost regions of our stellar cloud has been coming with remnants of foreign transmissions," he remarked with deep concern. Ninetia's voice carried a hint of despair too. "If so, why now? It just isn't fair." Tiberius reassured her. "We knew it would be one day. We prepared since the moment they left." She looked at him in the eye this time, and with a serious expression from her face. "And if it isn't enough, what about our people? About us and Tiberius cut her off before she could mention the name. "She'll be safe, and so will the rest of us." Ninetia scoffed. "God, you know as much as I. It won't be that easy." He turned to the window and imagined the city at large, then the world, and then the rest of the planets involved in the Federation. "I have to believe I can achieve the most desired outcome. I must. If I lose hope, then who else is there to keep the spirits high?" He was optimistic, but he needed to be. They both knew that morale would be needed at an all-time high to face the coming darkness, if it is indeed knocking at their solar system's doorstep once again. It weighed heavily on them both. Every day there was at some point a small moment of recollection, given by the clarity of the mind that left the vacuum filled with anxiety, the dread and the weight of responsibility that should never be placed on a single person. But here they were, Omegas, powerful beings possessing the abilities of old myths and legends, would have to shoulder it all. The first and last line of defense for Hope. Ninetia rolled on top of him fully. He caressed her as she rested her head on his shoulders and held him tight. "I'm afraid, honey." "So am I, dear. For you, for our daughter, for everyone." She faced him again, their heads so close the glow of their eyes reflected off their skin, and the front of Ninetia's horns rested against his forehead. "Promise me, you'll keep fighting, keep pushing forward until the end." And with a smile, Tiberius replied, "It goes without saying." Ninetia replaced her right hand on Tiberius's cheek. "I need to hear it. Please." He held her hand, and with a smooth tone, steering right through her mind to her heart, "I promise, like the vows we exchanged at our wedding, till death do us part. Do me a favor, darling. Try to do it without the dying part, okay?" They both smiled at each other for what seemed like an eternity, until he spoke. 3 weeks apart, and we're just going to stare each other down?" Ninetia had giggled. "Oh? And what alternative did you have in mind?" Playing coy, Tiberius whispered in her ear, "Mithra hasn't developed her super hearing yet." Ninetia purred like a tiger, and with the appetite of one began to smother Tiberius's lips with her own. A knock at the door halted them dead still. Nynesha rolled off Tiberius' side and straightened her silk. Tiberius was thinking back to his previous statement and wondered if that no longer applied, but beckoned whoever was at the door to open it. An Aurelian woman appeared in a doorway fitted in full power armour. Only her head wasn't covered, displaying the horns unique to female Aurelians, though in a distinct curvature different to Nynesha's. Brown hair and a face that would be adored universally. The armour had distinct plating, mimicking the petals of a flower. "Forgive my intrusion. Somebody doesn't feel comfortable tonight," spoke the woman with an elegant accent, before picking up from her side, obstructed by the wall. It was Mithra, in her pyjamas, holding a beer and rubbing her eyes. Nynesha waved her in and remarked with some minor disappointment, "It's all right, Cavett. Probably ate too much and has a stomachache." Cavett carried the tired girl to the arms of Nynesha, who laid her down between her and Tiberius. "Thank you, Auntie Cavett." The compliment from Mithra made her blush. "Dear, I'm not related to you. My brown hair should be enough to tell you that." Mithra pouted slightly. "Wish you were." "Well, you have your mother's sister, Maisie, whose arms are as big as your father's." Mithra rolled to her side and put the quilt over her and curled up with her teddy. She was clearly in a hurry to embrace the sleep she was robbed from by, presumably, a nightmare. Cavett had took her leave, saluting the royals before shutting the door behind her and posting herself outside on sentry duty. The parents looked at their daughter, who already drifted off to sleep. Taking the hint, they closed their eyes while cradling Mithra. When Tiberius awoke, he was staring at the red sun of Trappist-1 atop the mountain peaks overlooking the plains, holding the other natives in sight. Blustering cold winds throwing snow in all directions. He felt a physical and mental whiplash from being jolted back from a warm dream to the cold, hard reality. He pushed on through the snow, with words once spoken to his wife echoing in his mind. "I promise, like the vows we exchanged at our wedding, till death do us part."